What's up, guys? Jason Noble here, and I'm going to be making this video, and sorry about the quality, because this is going to be on my webcam, which is basically a potato cam. But since it's just a video of discussion, I think it's okay. Well, this video is coming after a recent Instagram discussion I had with a certain strength and conditioning coach, who apparently he coaches a few high-level athletes in several sports, including soccer, football, and a few other sports. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to go that low, but I almost want to mention his name because he is eventually going to be injuring and ruining careers of some of the athletes he's training. And I personally think that would be something that, in the overall benefit for the athletic community, would be a good thing. My buddy Zizu wanted to say hi. Alright, so this is the discussion. In an Instagram post, he posted a quarter squat and was mentioning how he prefers partial range of motion squats for many of his athletes. And by partial range of motion, he doesn't mean stopping just at parallel or just slightly above parallel. He means an outright quarter squat, like his knees bend just ever so slightly, then they come right back up. And he's arguing that this is safer and has more carryover for a field athlete. Well, that's total bullshit. Anyone who knows anything about strength training will completely disagree with this idea. It's just completely wrong on every level. All right, so I'm going to break it down in the best way that I know how. Well, first off, there are multiple studies showing that an exercise, when done through a greater range of motion, is superior for hypertrophy to the muscle. So when you do a full squat, you're going to be causing more overall hypertrophy for the muscle, which will cause more overall growth. Excuse me. When you do partial range of motion, you're just not going to be getting nearly as much hypertrophic benefit. So there's one aspect. That's from a purely hypertrophy perspective, which would mainly apply for a bodybuilder. So when you see a bodybuilder in the gym doing little quarter squats and not locking their knees out at the top, they probably have some tension bullshit to say about it, but it's actually full of shit. They should squat as low as they can and lock their knees out at the top, because that would be a full range of motion for their squats. They would actually get more overall strength from that. Here's the other aspect, and this one applies more to field athletes. So, when you're training a movement such as a squat, you are training strength in that range of motion So when you squat deep, you're training strength all the way to the very bottom position, all the way to the very top at lockout. You're training quarter squat, you're training only the last little bit at lockout. And frankly, in a sport, you're not only going to be doing the carryover from a squat in a sport, you're not only going to be doing that last little range of motion of locking out your leg. It depends on the situation in sport, but you might have to bend your leg to a similar degree as you would to squat completely ass to grass with a barbell on your back. Now, this does present something that does need to say. There is no genuine standard of how deep an athlete for a field sport or something should squat. There is a standard in powerlifting, and that standard is the top of the thigh at the hip joint must pass below the top of the knee. Now, this is completely irrelevant for athletic training, but most athletes have the capability of squatting to that depth safely. The vast majority of athletes do. And with the exceptions, you would be squatting down until they no longer can maintain a safe, neutral spine position. And even with these athletes, I have very, very rarely found people who can't do much further than a quarter squat. I have found people who can barely do a half squat, but they normally are sedentary. They aren't field athletes that play sports, especially not at a high level like this guy's training. I mean, he's training high-level athletes. Frankly, if they can't squat at least to powerlifting standards, there's an athletic trait that they need to adapt to become a better player, and that's superior mobility. And the vast majority of them will at least be able to squat pretty darn close. And that's as far as they should squat. However, here's the thing. The major reasoning behind all of this don't squat low is it's bad for your knees. When you squat low, it puts insane pressure on your knees. Well, guess what, everybody? That's bullshit too. As far as most scientific evidence shows, deeper squats are not harder on your knees. In fact, partial range of motion squats with more weight, which most people quarter squat a hell of a lot more than they could full squat. That's the number one reason people quarter squat, by the way, is they want to squat more weight. This actually puts far more pressure on the tendons in your knee. Also, you're not using any other muscles other than your quadriceps to change direction at that high of a position in a squat, which it just makes it more dangerous, and you could develop muscular imbalances over time. And this is supported by a study, which I will be linking below. You can check it out. It's perfectly legit. And another example, and I'm going to use this example because I've actually seen this happen on more than one occasion in a commercial gym. In commercial gyms, it's actually extremely rare to find someone who actually squats to death. Most people squat half squats, quarter squats. You see some that are just ridiculous. It's like slight knee unbend, then lockout. But most of them kind of quarter squat. And I've seen on a few occasions someone fail a quarter squat. And I'm going to tell you, it's fucking scary. I saw a girl. She's obviously has very little experience weightlifting, and unfortunately she had a boyfriend who is also very inexperienced in weightlifting, but he thinks he's experienced, which is probably the most dangerous thing in the strength and conditioning world. Someone that thinks they're experienced and has absolutely no clue what they're talking about. Well, he had her quarter squatting. He didn't see anything wrong with her form. And he decides to add weight. So he puts, I think it was 155 pounds on the bar. Well, she starts to go down. First, she has no understanding of how to brace her core, get tight. She just kind of bends her knees. Starts to go down. And when she gets to that point to where she would come back up, she is not strong enough to return back up. So, what happened is she completely collapsed. Her spine went from this to this in just a matter of seconds. Fortunately, her boyfriend was right behind her, and he did manage to catch her, which might have saved her from severe injury. A severe injury that could have easily been avoided by lowering the weight and actually squatting to proper depth. And here's the thing, from a field athlete's perspective, this exact circumstance could happen in a game. And you use American football because it's a very easy comparison in American football, because you have situations in American football where you're pressing up against the player, blocking, either trying to block them or get past the line, or some situation to where you're driving as hard as you can with your legs and pushing with your upper body. Well, what's going to happen there, if you train in a partial range of motion, if you're ever in the situation to where the other athlete is starting to slightly get the better of you and he pushes you just past that comfort point of when you would normally come back up in a squat, you are very likely to injure yourself. And that's not the goal of strength and conditioning as an athlete. When you train a partial range of motion, you are only training to get strong in that partial range of motion. A field athlete can benefit from a full range of motion in pretty much every lift they ever perform in the gym. And intentionally cutting the range of motion short is absolutely dangerous for these athletes. And when it's a genuine, I would understand a half squat sometimes. I understand that. But when it's a genuine quarter squat, as a responsible coach, you do not put a loaded bar on their back and tell them to squat. If that's all they're capable of doing, as a responsible coach, you would not do that to your athlete because you are risking injuring that athlete and you could ruin their career. As an athlete, their goal is not to do whatever you're trying to get them to do in the gym. Their goal is to perform on the field. Your job is to make sure that they can get as strong and athletic as possible safely. And learning proper squat mechanics, which is using a full range of motion, is safer. All right, so this basically covers it. And I'm not going to link any of his info or give his name away, this certain coach, but I will say this. If you look at his Instagram, he is putting athletes in through exercises he himself cannot perform. In his picture, he was quarter squatting 315 for 3 reps. And he called 315 heavyweight. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a dick here, but 315 for a grown male is extremely lightweight for a squat, yet a partial range of motion squat. For the same range of motion he was doing, I could probably do over 500 pounds. In fact, I have done 500 pounds from a pin squat for actually a greater range of motion. I did 545. So he's not even very accomplished as a strength athlete or athlete of any kind himself, and he can't perform basic strength movements such as the squat himself, yet he's putting athletes under bars using them with squats. And an even more disturbing thing is he enjoys making athletes use a safety squat bar, which frankly I think he has absolutely no clue what the safety squat bar's purpose is. He says something about shoulder mobility, which yes, you can use it if you have shoulder mobility issues, but there are much better options. Just a wider grip or a cambered bar is a better option. But a safety squat bar on an athlete that does not understand how to brace their core, which none of his athletes do because he doesn't teach it, and does not understand basic squat mechanics with a normal barbell already, is not going to, it's just going to get worse when using a safety bar squat, which makes it much harder to contract your lats and get your back tight. You're just 1,000 times more likely to fold over and have more problems, which this coach cannot identify. And frankly, half of his athletes are a ticking time bomb for their knees to just give out during a game. They're going to say it's a fluke accident, but frankly, any athlete that lists him as their trainer, they blow out their knee, I'm not going to be surprised. Guys, if you're performing squats, I don't care what sport you're doing it for. You need to try to train through a full range of motion at least 90% of the time. The one exception is if you perform box squats or pin squats, which, when done correctly, you can shorten the range of motion to some sort of degree, which can help you in some athletic benefit. Now, they're both very different types of movements, in my opinion. The box squat is more to teach explosiveness because you come to a dead stop on the box, then come up. I actually think this is good for field athletes. And the pin squat is more of a overload tool to put much heavier weight on the bar than you are capable for through a full range of motion. But you're taking this from a dead stop from the pins instead of taking it from the top position and lowering it and coming back down. So that extra force onto my knee joint, for the most part, is not happening on a pin squat. And also, you don't perform pin squats regularly. This is on a rare occasion. But guys, if you have a coach who tells you don't squat too low, it's going to hurt your knees, he doesn't know what he's doing. You need to find a new coach. If you're going to be squatting for sports, you need to squat as far as you can get down and maintain an arch in your lower back. That's my rule. And anything short of that, when you're stopping yourself short, you're cutting yourself short, you're making yourself weaker, and you're potentially going to injure yourself. Well, guys, that's quite a long video. I'm going to cut it off there. I'll talk to you next time, guys. Make sure you guys make your squats nice, strong, nice and deep. I'm out.